Hey, this is MJ, and in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful herringbone single crochet stitch hat. This is a beautiful stitch that's nice and thick and warm and cozy. So this is my toddler size, but I'm going to be showing you how to make the baby size today. And the yarn that I'm using is Swish worsted weight, and the color that I'll be using is Frosting. This color here is Wonderland Heather, and if you've looked at some of my pictures, I've also used Squirrel Heather and Dove Heather for some of the hats that I've shown in the pictures. And I'll be using these radiant wood hooks from WeCrochet today, and you're going to need two hook sizes. So you'll need a 4.5 millimeter for the ribbed band and a 5 millimeter when we're working the herringbone single crochet stitch. Now for my own hat, I added something a little extra to it, and you're welcome to do this as well. So I used the color Frosting here, and I also added a strand of blush yarn to it. So this is just a lace weight mohair. It is a blend, I believe, of kid mohair and silk. So I've added a strand, and what this is going to do is make this hat extra thick and warm and kind of give it that fuzzy halo. This is completely optional, but if you want to add something extra, some extra warmth, that is something that you could do. You could add in a strand, but I'll be showing you today just with the one strand of Swish worsted. So we're going to begin working in rows, herringbone single crochet rows to begin this hat. Now I've already worked out this rectangle. I'm going to show you how to do that. So the chain that we're going to start with will be the height of our hat. We will form this by slip stitching it together. We'll gather the top of the hat and we'll make a band along the bottom. So you're going to begin with your 5 millimeter. And we'll make a slip knot and put that on the hook. Now, if you go over to the blog, open up the description box, and I will have a link for the blog post that the free pattern will be available. You can follow along in sizes baby to adult, or you can purchase the PDF or the ebook that includes a pattern from myself, from Hand Jan Crochet and Brianna K Crochet. So you can check the description box for all of those links. So for the baby size, we're going to chain out 27. Now, what I want you to think about here, it may take you a couple tries with your chain. You want the chain tight, but not too tight that you can't work into those back humps. If you make this stitch too loose, it's going to look really weird on the side. So just try and keep the chain tight, but like I say, not too tight that you're not going to be able to work into it. So chain out 27. So now what you're going to do is turn this chain. You're going to see all of those little back humps, the back leg of the chain. We're going to work a single crochet into the second chain from the hook, and we're going into that back hump and work your single crochet. Now we're going to begin our herringbone single crochet pattern. To work a herringbone single crochet stitch, we're going to go through the second bar of our stitch right here. So you want to go through that bar first, and then we'll go through the back hump, and we'll pull up a loop. So now you have 3 loops on the hook. Now, one important thing is you always want to make sure you give it a tug. You never want this stitch too tight, or you're going to really struggle to work into it. So now we'll yarn over, pulling through all 3. So now if you take a look at the side of that stitch, you're going to see 3 bars. So now from here on out, we're going to go through that third bar. So 1, 2, 3. We'll push the hook through the third bar, and this is why you need to keep that stitch loose. Then we will work into the back hump, And this is why you don't want those chains too tight. You need to be able to get into them. Pull up a loop, we'll yarn over and pull through all 3. So this is what you're going to continue to do, working across the length of the chain. Always make sure you kind of pull that up. This last stitch needs a tug up to the height of these other ones, or you're not going to be able to work into that bar. Okay, so if you're noticing that that stitch is too small, you can't work into it, redo that stitch, try again. Okay, so I've pulled it up that it's all at the same height and pull through. And like I say, if this chain is too loose, it's going to look all wonky. You want it to be nice and smooth, aligned with the stitches. So as you work across, you're going to end up that you have 26 stitches. We started with 27 chains. You worked into the second chain from the hook, so you end up with 26 stitches across. So I'm going to complete that now off camera, and then I'm going to meet you up when I've completed the first row. Okay, so I have worked across. I have 26 stitches, and it should have some stretch, and your side should look fairly neat. If you need to do it a couple times, then just go ahead and redo until you have a nice neat look. Now the next row is going to be the most complicated row. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and now we'll be working the reverse herringbone single crochet stitch. So this is the trickiest row. I'm going to go through it really slow with you, and you're just going to want to practice. I'm going to try to give you all of the tips and tricks that I learned when trying to create the stitch, because it's not easy when you're first learning it. So what you are going to do is instead of going front to back, we're now going back to front when we go through the stitch. Now you really want to make sure that this yarn isn't getting tugged in behind. You're always needing to concentrate on keeping it to the front so that it's not getting in behind your hook, okay? You want to keep it to the front of your hook. Now also you can see, let's just sort of take a look at the stitch. If you turn your work, this is your stitch. So you see those little V's? This is the stitch. See this little loop right here? That is not the stitch you're going to be working under. You want to see this pop up. This is the wrong side of our work right now. And if you look the wrong side here, see how you can see all of that little ridge? I have not worked into it at all. So we're going to start out with just a reverse single crochet in the first stitch. So here's my first stitch. I'm going to hold my yarn. I'm going to go back to front under the stitch. So this little loop is here. I'm not working under it. Now I'm going to grab my yarn. I'm going to pull it through, and as you see here, I'm going to fully rotate my hook to get it into position. So now I have the 2 loops on my hook. Make sure to give them a tug. We never want this stitch tight. We want to keep it nice and loose. And then we're going to pull through. Now we're going to look back. Remember how we did the first stitch on our first row? We had 2 bars and we went through the second one. So we're just doing the reverse now. We're going to go under that second bar. Okay, so that's done. Now we need to go under the next stitch. Again, keeping our yarn to the front. We're going to go under the stitch, back to front. Okay, I'm making sure I'm not going through that loop. You're going to grab your yarn, you're going to pull it through, fully rotating that hook. Okay, give it a tug. You're going to have 3 loops on the hook now. Yarn over and pull through all 3. So now when we turn, we're going to see the 3 bars, 1, 2, 3. You're going under the 3rd bar. And this will be now and throughout, you'll go through that 3rd bar. Keeping our yarn to the front, we're going to go from the back to the front under that stitch. Again, you can see these little loops here. I'm not going under them. I'm going to grab the yarn. pulling it up. I fully rotate my hook, getting it into position. You want to keep this really loose, like don't tense up on this. You want to make sure this is pulled. You'll yarn over, pull through all three, because you want to keep that this loop, this bar here, is easy to work into. If that's too tight, you're pulling your stitch too tight and you need to loosen it up. So go through the third bar, you go under the stitch. I'm going really slow. You can do this fairly quickly once you get used to it. We're going under the stitch, back to front. We're avoiding that little loop. You're grabbing the yarn, pulling it through, fully rotating the hook. Yarn over and pull through all three. So you're going to continue working that now all the way across. Again, we have 26 stitches. That is the same stitch count throughout as we work this. If you're doing another size, head over to the blog and follow along. Okay, so I'm just coming to my last stitch. And I'll chain one and turn. Now we're back to the right side of our work, which is always the easiest side. That will go really quick. You'll have to take your time when you're on the wrong side, but you can speed things up when you're back to the right side of your work. So our first stitch, now we're going to look here. Here's sort of that nice twisted or slanted stitch, and we will be going under. Again, if you turn your work, you can see the actual stitch. We're working under here. So we're going under the stitch. We're just going to work a single crochet to start. So pull up. Still like to make sure I keep that stitch nice and loose. Pull it through. We're going through the second bar and going through the next stitch, pulling up a loop, making sure to give them a tug, yarning over and pulling through all three. So now we're back to the third bar. So every stitch now, it'll be the third bar. You go under. You should be able to slide your hook nice and easily. If you're not, go back, make sure you're yanking on those stitches to keep them loose, or go up a hook size. So now, again, this loop here is not touched. That's what's giving us our beautiful herringbone stitch look. Go through, pull up a loop, yarn over, pulling through all three. So this will now go quickly. You can work quickly along this row once you get the hang of it. And this yarn is so nice and soft, it's just going to glide so easily along. Okay, so I'm going to complete that off camera and then I'll meet you up again. So for the remainder of the pattern now, we are just repeating row 2 and row 3. So we began on the right side, row 1, so we'll be ending on a right side row, which is an odd number. Okay, so I have a total of 49 rows. These rows are really easy to count because you're just looking at your alternating your stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So I've ended now on row 49, and the size of your panel should be about 5.5 inches by 15.5 inches. I have all of the sizes listed on the blog, so if you're altering or if you're working with the mohair, you may find that your panel will come out a little bit bigger. That's okay. You can either just go with the fact that it's a little bit bigger, or just go by the measurement. Stop on a right side row when you've reached that desired measurement, okay? But I just made mine turned out a little bit bigger, but I went with the teen size for myself and I like the overall fit. So if you don't add the mohair, it'll be a little bit snugger. If you add the mohair, a little bit looser. Easy to alter however you really want it to come out. So work up, if you're working the baby size, work up the 49 rows. Now this baby size is going to fit about a 17 to 18 inch head size, which you're looking at probably a 6 to 12 month old child. Now, if you wanted to make this a little bit smaller, you could just reduce it by 2 to 4 stitches and just reduce the length. Don't make as many rows. Really easy to customize this to any size, but most babies, their heads rapidly grow and they reach that 16-inch mark probably within a couple months. So I think this is a good size overall that a baby is going to grow into and hopefully will fit them up to a year so they can get lots of wear out of it. So now what we're going to do is we'll chain 1. We're going to fold now so that the right side's facing. So our nice herringbone stitch will be to the inside right now. Then what we're going to do is slip stitch our rows together. So the last row is getting slip stitched to the first row. So what you'll do is push your hook through the stitch on the last row, going over to the first stitch of the first row, and we will just slip stitch those together. This is a little tight. I'm going to loosen that up a bit. Okay. Then you're just going through the next stitch, and these stitches will be really easy to see because we worked in that back hump. You can really see the actual stitch rather than just the side of the chain, which makes this a little bit easier. My chain is a little bit tight, so that's why it might be a little awkward to pull through, but just wiggle it through. Once you get going, it shouldn't be too bad. Just make sure not to do those slip stitches too tight that you distort the side seam of your hat. Okay, so I'm going to work that across off camera and then I'll meet you back up again. Okay, so now that I've slip stitched all the way across, I'm going to flip my hat. Okay, you can see how nicely the seam just blends right in. Now what we're going to do is work our band. So at this point, I'm going to switch over now to my smaller hook. I'm going to chain 1. And now what we're doing is evenly working around the band. So this could be a little bit tricky because you really have to kind of gauge this out. So I'm working for the baby. So for the baby, I'm going to work evenly 68 stitches around this hat. So it's going to end up that just where you kind of can easily add your stitches, you're just wanting it to kind of work so that your stitches don't look too bunchy, but they don't look too, we need enough stitches that the band's going to work well as well. So you're just trying to evenly space them, count as you go. You may need to give it a couple tries to get the right stitch count, but I find it does work out fairly well if you just sort of put your stitches where they can kind of evenly be placed and just keep working around. So you're aiming with this size for 68, but now go ahead and go to the blog if you're working on a different size. Okay, so I've worked around 68. What I did is I marked my halfway point, and then if I was off, I wanted to hit about 34 at the halfway point and then another 34 around. So that's just a tip if you're struggling to get the right stitch count. Try and split it up so you're not working so many stitches. So now I'm going to slip stitch in to the first single crochet to join. Okay, so now in the pattern, I'm going to give you two options. You can do your fold over band like I'm going to show you. That's my preferred method, but sometimes for men or boys, if they would prefer maybe not to have that style and you just want a simple band like I'm showing my husband modeling, all you're going to do is work single crochets around in the back loop only. For the baby size, I would say maybe do about 4 rounds. So you would just chain 1, work a single crochet in the back loop only, just like this. Or you could do regular single crochets. Working in the back loop only will just give you that sort of nice little ridging look. So you can work the band that way, or alternatively how I'm going to show you. So instead of a chain 1, we're going to chain out a total of 15, and then we're going to do a join as you go ribbed band. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now what you'll do is work a single crochet in the second chain from your hook. So 1, 2, and we'll work single crochets into each chain. So work that all the way down your chain. So now what you do is we skip over this very first stitch and we're going to slip stitch to the base here now over 2. So slip stitch and slip stitch over another. Now I want you to turn your work. You're going to pull your yarn so it's to the back. And now we're going to look at the stitch. So make sure you turn your work so you can see the stitch. We're going to work in the back loop only, working up. If you're confused where you're working into that first stitch, you should have 14 stitches, so you can count back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So here's my first stitch. I'm going to go through the back loop only and work a single crochet. So now we're working back loop only through every stitch, and you should have a total of 14 for the baby. Sometimes it's always good to count your stitches so you don't lose track. I'll chain 1 and turn, and then we're working back. And as you can see, we're working this band in rows, and we're going to join it along as we go. So you can count down as you work to make sure that you don't miss a stitch and that you keep missing that. You don't want to miss a stitch, so count down 14 stitches and I'll meet you at the base. Okay, so now we've worked all the way down. We need to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches along the body edge. 1, 2, turn our work. Okay, and then we're looking back at our stitches, working up again, and now we're just repeating this back and forth, okay? So just joining the band as we go. So now in total, you should end up with, we have 68 stitches. We want to end up with 68 rows of ribbing. So this will take a little bit to make all of the rows of ribbing. So I'll work that up off camera and I'll meet you up for that final step. Once I complete it. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to close up the top of the hat while I'm here. And then tonight I'll work this around and meet you back up tomorrow to show you how to slip stitch that together. So to close up the top of the hat, I'm going to stay with my 5mm hook. So I'm not changing to my smaller hook for this. I'm just going to join in now to the seam with my yarn. Okay, and now what we're going to do is single crochet in every other row around. So we have a total of 49 rows. We're going to single crochet approximately around 25. So when you go through every other row, you can look at your herringbone stitch row here. There's 1. Come over here for 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm just going to go around in that manner. Just going to show you this here. I like the row that I picked because it actually almost feels like you're going under a stitch when you're going through that one, and that also helps you kind of see which row you're at. It's almost like you're going under a stitch here. Okay, so I'm coming around here and I'm ending with 25 stitches, and then I'm going to slip stitch to join. Then you can fasten off with a tail. And now we'll do some more weaving to close the top of the hat. I'm just going to use my yarn needle at this point now. And I'm going to go ahead and weave through every other stitch around. Okay, and then just pull that tight. So then you're just going to pull and you are going to work, just continue weaving to get the top of the hat to stay closed. So you're going to weave, try to do it like under those loops that you made. So I go around a little bit just to really get that pulled in well. And then once I'm happy that it's closed nicely, I then like to weave back in the opposite direction. Weave back a bit in the opposite, and then you can even weave back again the other way. The weaving is going to help to secure this tail. So you don't want the top of your hat coming undone, so you want to do a good job with your weaving here. Okay, and then you can just give that a trim. Again, I still have to finish my band, but you can see how the top of the hat's now going to look. And I'll meet you back up again when I finish this to finish off our band. And then to finish the hat off, we can add a personalized tag and a nice pom-pom. You could make a yarn pom-pom or just add a nice fur pom-pom to the top. Okay, so I worked all of my ribbing around the entire hat. Now you should be ending up here at the top. Okay, and I think I've already chained one. No, I haven't. Okay. So here's my last stitch. I'm going to chain one, and then what we're going to do is just slip stitch it together. So you're going to go through the back loop, go over to that starting chain, and slip stitch together. So work through the back loop of each stitch of the ribbing, and it's just going to easily seam this band together. Okay, so I'll just continue to do that now all the way across, and then I'll meet you up. Okay, so once you've finished working that all the way across, we're just going to fasten off. You can weave in this tail. Okay, so you can weave one way and then just weave your tail back in the opposite direction. Okay, so now you can flip up your band. Now I like to find that seam, which just blends in really well, but I still like to put it at the back of the hat. Okay, and then we can add our finishing touches. So you don't need to add a pom-pom at all, but if you would like to, I can show you how to do that. So these are snap pom-poms that I purchased from Amazon. This is the large, I believe it's about a 5-inch size, and it's nice and big, but I actually like that look. You can do smaller for the baby size hats, but I still love the nice big pom-pom. So I like to take a sewing needle, something that's a lot finer so that I can get through the holes. And just take some yarn to sew it. It's just sometimes a little trickier getting the yarn through that tiny end, but I can usually get this one to work. So what you want to do is, this is how it's going to snap. So we have this end, so it's going to snap together. So we're going to sew it on here like this. Now, sometimes you can get the pom-poms that have the buttons, and you can sew those ones to the inside of the hat. Use your hook to pull the little string down and attach your pom-pom that way. If your pom-pom has a tie, then you can just tie it to the top. It doesn't have to be the snap style. What's nice about the buttons, if you can do it on the inside, if you remove your pom-pom, you can wear the hat either way without having this on the top. Okay, so then all I'm going to do is knot the yarn to secure that. Now you could weave these tails, but I'm just going to trim them just to make it easy and quick here. So then you just need to take your pom-pom. Sometimes you really gotta push at it to get it to snap. And you can see it's nice and big on this one. It's a little big for the baby, but you can get smaller pom-poms. I think I'm just out of all of my smaller ones. And then I like to add a personalized tag. These tags are from brickbubble.ca, and I'll have a link to her website in the description. But there's tags that you can purchase on Amazon, Etsy. It's pretty common now that you can get either customized or you can get little tags that just say handmade. So I like these ones that just, that you can hammer on with leather rivets. I am just gonna snap it, but with the kit that I received, you have this as well as this, which you would, so when this goes on, you can then line it up and you can just get a hammer. So what you do is you just attach it and then you use this to then hammer this end. So you then just hammer it on. But you can also get them that you can sew on as well. So at this point, you then would just line up your size. Okay, and then you would just hammer it. Okay, easy peasy. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's such a cute little warm cozy hat for little ones. But of course you can purchase the PDF with all sizes or go over to the blog to view them all for free. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tap the bell to stay updated on all my new videos and tutorials. Thanks so much, guys. Have an awesome day.